Let us start by discussing what are socio-religious reform movements. During the first half of the 19th century, Indian society was plagued by the deep-rooted issues of casteism, decadence, and rigid social norms. These practices, often justified in the name of religion, were contrary to humanitarian feelings and values. Recognizing the urgent need for change, various reform movements emerged. These reform movements were broadly classified into two categories. The main reasons for these socio-religious reform movements were the presence of colonial government on Indian soil, religious and social ills, depressing position of women, spread of education and increased awareness of the world, awareness of the outside world. In India, the idea of socio-religious reform movements was the society would be preserved while its members would be transformed. Some prominent Indian social reformers. Part 1. Women atrocities in India. In the gender-biased patriarchal Indian society, most of the women are considered secondary, are subjugated and exploited for being women. India's vast history has glimpses of innumerable examples corroborating the stated claim. While it is often celebrated that the eradication of evil practices in Indian society, such as sati, is attributed to the efforts of the British, the truth is that the British colonial rulers did not actively intervene in matters related to Indian religion and social customs. Why didn't the British intervene in the religious affairs of the Indian population? Now the question arises as to how the changes in Indian society, particularly the eradication of social evils, were brought about if the British government did not take efforts initially in this regard. Numerous individuals, reform societies, and religious organizations worked hard to bring about these changes. They were influenced by the father of modern India, Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was a champion of women's rights in India. He laid the foundations of the women's liberation movement in this country. He revolted against the subjection of women and pleaded for the restoration of their rights. Roy was very concerned on the welfare of our Indian women.
इस संसार में नारी जहां न हो पति का वास और उसके घर की प्यारी, अब इस अग्नि में खुद को समर्पित कर शहीद हो जाओ और अपने सखियों के लिए मार्गदर्शी कहलाओ। तेरे इस महान बलिदान की ज्योति अब सारे ब्रह्मांड में जलेगी।
Raja Ram Mohan Roy and abolition of sati. The pivotal moment that motivated Raja Ram Mohan Roy to initiate his efforts towards the abolition of sati is worth exploring. In the late 18th century, a young Raja Ram Mohan Roy couldn't understand why his sister-in-law was being dressed in her finest wedding outfit mere moments after her husband had passed away. He was too young to understand even his brother's death, but soon he was to understand the horrific practice of sati. This incident in his own family set Ram Mohan's mind in turmoil. The heart-rending sight of his sister-in-law's sati made a deep impression on Ram Mohan's mind. Deeply disturbed by her death, he took a vow to put an end to this dreadful custom. Believing that no human beings should ever be pressured to kill themselves for any reason, he concentrated campaigning against sati with all the zeal he could command after retiring from East India Company 3 years later. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was a strong advocate of rationalism. His first tract against sati, titled A Conference Between an Advocate for and an Opponent of the practice of burning widows alive was published in 1818 as a pamphlet in Bengali and English. The purpose of this dialogue was to present arguments from both sides and critically examine the justifications for and against sati. In the tract, Ram Mohan depicted an advocate presenting strong arguments against the practice, highlighting the moral, ethical, and humanitarian concerns associated with sati. The opponent, representing the defenders of the practice, would have put forth counter-arguments based on religious, cultural, and traditional beliefs. Through this dialogue, Ram Mohan Roy aimed to present a reasoned and logical case against the practice of burning widows alive. It was an effective method of communicating his ideas to a wider audience and stimulating public discourse on this contentious issue. The publication of this tract contributed to the growing movement for the abolition of sati and helped to shape public opinions against the practice. Due to sustained efforts of Rajaram Mohan Roy, sati was formally banned on 4th December 1829. The British East India Company, under the leadership of Governor General Lord William Bentinck, enacted the Bengal Sati Regulation, which declared sati illegal and punishable by law. Collaboration with the British. One of the main criticisms against Rajaram Mohan Roy was that he collaborated with the British colonial rulers. His close association with the British administration and his reliance on their support and patronage led some to accuse him of being a stooge or puppet of the British. Opinion. During that period, it was not uncommon for Hindus in Bengal to view the British rule favorably, considering the atrocities inflicted by Islamic rulers in the past. It can be speculated that he believed the Hindus in Bengal could benefit and learn from the British in various aspects. There have been controversies surrounding the reported number of sati cases in India, with some suggesting that the figures were manipulated by the British to portray Indian culture in a negative light. The argument persists that the actual occurrence of sati might have been much lower than what was claimed by the British authorities. Conclusion. Notwithstanding any criticisms that may exist, the contributions and achievements of Rajaram Mohan Roy hold a significant and enduring place in history. Rajaram Mohan Roy, indeed, displayed great courage and fearlessness in his outspoken criticism of religious practices that he deemed unjust. He was not afraid to challenge the prevailing orthodoxies and superstitions of his time, even if they were deeply ingrained in Indian society. His fearlessness in speaking out against religious practices that he considered unjust paved the way for social and religious reform movements in India. His advocacy for equality, human rights, and rational thinking continues to inspire individuals and movements dedicated to challenging oppressive systems and promoting social justice. He played a pivotal role in spreading enlightenment during a time when it was challenging for many to embrace progressive ideas. He earned the well-deserved titles of the Father of Renaissance and a Modern Man due to his efforts in promoting the significance of modern Western education and ushering in a new era of modernization and civilization. He is rightfully recognized as the father of modern India and a trailblazer of Bengal Renaissance.